Hello everyone, and welcome back to Void Signal. Quick thing before we start. The word utopia was invented in 1516 by Thomas More, and it's a joke, a pun he built into the name and expected his readers to catch. Utopos means the good place. Autopos means the place that isn't there. He gave the perfect society a name that means, depending on how you hear it, either paradise or nowhere, and he never told anybody which one he meant. Tonight's story comes from a world where they found out. Settle in. This one's told from inside. The first thing I want to say is that it is beautiful, and that everybody skips this part, and skipping it makes the rest impossible to understand. I have been on the ground for 6 hours when the light starts to go. The valley runs east to west, and the sun comes down the length of it, and the terraces on the north wall hold it the way a stairway holds water. There are orchards up there. There are stone channels carrying meltwater between them, cut by hand, 400 years of maintenance in every joint. Somebody sweeps those channels. Somebody has swept them every week for longer than my country has existed. The air smells like cut grass and hot stone, and faintly like bread. I am standing in a public square with a bag on my shoulder and a translation unit I have already stopped needing, and I am looking at a city where nobody is hungry, nobody is sick, nobody is armed, and nobody has died in 391 years. A woman comes up to me. She is maybe 50, in a green work shirt, with dirt under her nails and reading glasses pushed up into her hair. She has the face of somebody's favorite aunt. "You're off the ship," she says. "I am. Sabine, 19. She puts out her hand and I shake it, and I do not understand the number yet, and I assume it is a district or a house or something in the drift of their language I have not caught. Odile. Odile. She says it carefully, the way you do with a new word you intend to keep. "How many seats have you got?" That is the fourth question anyone asks me on Hesper. Not the first. The first three are always, are you off the ship, and are you well, and have you eaten? In 400 years of isolation, these people have not lost their manners. They will feed you before they beg. On the lander? 6. 3 of us came down. 3 seats, Sabine says. 3 seats. She nods slowly, and I watch something happen behind her eyes that I have no name for yet, and then she smiles at me, and it is a real smile. Warm as anything. "Then I'll make the ask," she says. "Formally, so you know it's serious. Odile, will you take me with you when you go?" 6 hours. I have been on this planet for 6 hours, and she is the 11th person to say those words to me. Let me back up. The Ptarmigan is a survey vessel with a crew of 5 and a mandate that reads, in its entirety, locate and assess the colony vessel Hesper, missing since 1974 UTC standard, last reported at 41 light years. 400 years is a long time for a mandate to sit in a filing system. Nobody expected us to find anything. Survey work is mostly confirming that things are gone. We find the planet on the 11th day. Bo sees it first because Bo is always awake at the wrong hours. He puts it on the main, and the 5 of us stand there and look at a world with green on it, and blue, and cloud systems moving in the ordinary way that cloud systems move, and the whole bridge goes quiet in a way I have not heard before or since. "That's not survivable," Yusuf says. He runs our systems. He is a pessimist by trade. "That's a garden. You don't get a garden in 400 years. Terraforming's a 900-year job with a fleet." "It's a garden," Bo says. Captain Teng leans in over the console with both hands and does not say anything for a long time. Amos Teng is 56 years old and has been doing this for 30 of them, and he has a rule, which he states often, that nothing in space is ever as good as it looks. "Signals?" "Loads," I say. My board is lighting up faster than I can sort it. Voice traffic, data. Captain, it's unencrypted. All of it. There's no security layer on anything. On a whole planet? On a whole planet. He straightens up. "Right," he says. "Nobody says the word paradise. That's an order. First person who says it is on galley for the month. We go into orbit and we spend 2 days listening, and what we hear is a civilization of somewhere over 4 million people going about its business in a drifted but entirely comprehensible English. They talk about weather. They talk about a dispute over an irrigation right in a place called Coley. Somebody runs a program where an old man reads books aloud for 2 hours every evening and takes requests. There is no military traffic. There is no police traffic. There is no emergency traffic of any kind, and it takes me most of the first day to work out why that bothers me, and then I have it. There are no ambulances. They must have a different word for it, Tang says. They don't have the concept, sir. There's no word for hospital either. There's a building in the capital that translates as the resting house, and from context, it's a hospice, except nobody's in it. He looks at me. Send the greeting, he says. The reply comes back in 40 minutes, in a woman's voice, in clear. Ptarmigan, this is Hesper ground. We hear you. We hear you very well. Please say again your crew number. I say again our crew number. Ptarmigan, this is Hesper ground. 5 crew. Understood. Please say your lander capacity. I look at Tang. Tang frowns and nods. I say our lander capacity. There is a pause of about 90 seconds, which is far longer than the signal delay accounts for. And when the woman comes back, her voice has changed in a way I clock immediately, because reading voices is what I am for. She is not excited. She is not frightened. She has the flattened, careful sound of a person delivering news in a house where somebody has just died. Ptarmigan, this is Hesper ground. 6. Understood. You are welcome here. You are very welcome. There is a landing field east of the capital, and I'm going to give you the coordinates now, and I want to say, please, when you come down, please don't open the hatch until you have spoken to somebody in authority. Please. Do you understand? Ask her why, Tang says. I ask her why. Ptarmigan, said the woman, we don't have authority the way you mean it. But there'll be somebody there. Just please talk to them first. We go down on the 4th day. Bo flies. Fen Alarcon comes because a medic goes down on every first contact, and I come because somebody has to talk. Tang and Yusuf stay up, which Tang hates, and which is procedure. And the last thing he says to me on the pad is, "You're my ears, Sar." I don't need your opinions. I need what they actually said. The landing field is a field. Grass, cut short, with a stone perimeter and a windsock. 400 years, and they have kept a landing field mown for a ship that stopped coming. There is a crowd at the fence line. Not close. Behind the stones, in a long line, 3 and 4 deep, stretching maybe half a kilometer in both directions, and they are silent, and they are not moving. How many? Bo says. Fen is at the port. 6,000. 8. They're not cheering, I say. No, Fen says. A single figure walks out from the perimeter and comes across the grass and stops at a respectful distance and waits with her hands loose at her sides. Older woman. Very upright. She is wearing what I will later learn is the only thing on Hesper resembling a uniform, which is a plain gray coat that means this person will tell you the truth. We come down the ramp, and she does not step forward. Don't come closer yet, she calls. Please. My name is Ils Kadir. I'm the speaker for the valley, which means I talk when people need somebody to talk. Are you well? Have you eaten? We're well, I call back. Thank you. Good. She takes a breath. Then, before anything else, how many seats have you got in that boat? And behind her, 8,000 people at the fence line lean forward together in complete silence to hear the answer. That's the sound I can't get out of my head, and it isn't a sound. It's 8,000 people not making one. 6, I call. 3 are ours. Ils Kadir closes her eyes. Then she turns around and shouts it down the line. 3. And I watch it move along that crowd like wind through a field. And there is no shouting, no surge, no anger. There is a long ripple of people putting their hands over their faces, or turning to the person beside them, or simply sitting down on the ground where they stood. And then they start to queue. Not at us. At a table. There is a wooden trestle table at the fence line that I had not registered, and by the time Ils Kadir has walked the 20 meters back to it, there are already 400 people lined up behind it, and a boy of about 15 is setting out a ledger and an ink pot. "What is that?" Fen says. "What is that?" Odile. "I don't know." "Ask her." I ask her. Ils Kadir looks at me with enormous patience, the way you look at a child asking why the sea is salty. "They're putting their names down," she says, "for the ask. We are taken to a guest house because there is a guest house, which has been maintained, staffed, and provisioned for 400 years against the possibility of guests. There are fresh sheets. There is soap that somebody made. The woman who shows us the rooms is called Rai. She is about 30, and she is missing 2 fingers on her left hand, which I notice because, in a place with no disease and no accidents, it is the only injury I have seen. She carries our bags up herself, and at the door she puts them down and straightens up and says, "Before I go, Odile, Fen, Bo, will you take me with you when you go?" "We don't decide that," Fen says. "He is being kind. That's the captain's decision." "I know," Rai says. "But you'll be asked what you think. You'll be asked, and I'd like you to have my name." She waits. She actually waits, standing in the doorway with her hand on the frame, and the silence goes on long enough that I understand she is not going to leave until one of us answers her properly. "Not this time," I say. I do not know where the phrase comes from. It arrives in my mouth out of 900 hours of listening to their traffic, and it is, I discover later, exactly right. Rai's shoulders come down. "Not this time," she says back, and she smiles, and she leaves, and the entire exchange has taken about 11 seconds and has clearly been performed by both of us according to a form. Fen shuts the door. "They're prisoners," he says. "They don't act like prisoners. Odile, every single person we have met has asked us to take them off this planet. Every one. Inside a minute." The woman on the field asked before she asked our names. He sits down on the bed. He is not a man who sits down on beds. There's somebody with a boot on these people. There has to be. Somebody's up in a house on a hill. I've been listening to 400 years of their radio, and there's no hill, I say. Fen, I have listened to 900 hours of a civilization talking to itself with no encryption and no censor and no fear, and I have heard arguments about water rights and a 2-hour row about whether a bridge should be wood or stone. Nobody is afraid of anybody. There's no ruler. There is no police. Then why does everyone want to leave? I don't know. Well, he says, find out. Because I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not getting in that boat and going home and filing a report that says we found paradise and left 4 million people in it. I spend the second day in the capital with a young man called Theodore, who has been assigned to walk me around and who asks me on the tram, politely, before we have left the first stop. I say not this time. He says not this time. We carry on. The capital is called Hesper, like the ship, like the world. 60,000 people, stone and timber and a great deal of glass because they have excellent glass. The streets are clean because people clean them. There is a market, and the market has no money in it. There is a system of obligation I never fully learn, and it works. And it has worked for 4 centuries. I see. Children in a schoolyard. A man carving a door frame with a chisel and a mallet, and no apparent hurry. 3 women arguing furiously about a piece of music. A very old dog asleep in the sun. What I keep coming back to, in the report I write afterwards and in the years since, is the standard of the work. Everything on Hesper is made better than it needs to be. The doorframe the man is carving does not need carving. It is a doorframe on a storehouse. The stone channels on the terraces could have been concrete and are cut granite with a fitted lip. There is a footbridge over the Sallow with a handrail somebody has spent what must have been 400 hours turning on a lathe, one baluster at a time, in a pattern that changes very slowly along its length, so that you only notice it if you walk the whole bridge with your hand on the rail, which I do, twice. It took me most of a week to understand why, and when I did understand it, I had to sit down on the end of that bridge for a while. They have time. That is all. They have an unlimited quantity of the one resource that every other culture in human history has been rationed on. And it turns out that what a species does with unlimited time, if you take away the fear underneath it, is not decadence and not stagnation. It is craft. It is a man taking 11 days over a doorframe because there is no reason on this world to take 10. And every single one of them would put down the chisel and get on a ship tonight. I see. No clinic. No pharmacy. No cemetery. Theodore, where do you bury people? We don't. Cremation? He looks confused and then, when I explain, appalled. No, nobody's. Odile, nobody dies. Nobody dies. Not since the keep. Nobody's died in 391 years. He says this without wonder, in the tone of a man telling you the local bus runs on the half hour. You can die. You die all the time. People fall off things. My grandfather drowned in the Sallow twice. You just don't stay. I stop walking. Say that again. You don't stay dead. It takes about a day and a half. You come back at the place you're registered. He is watching my face now, and he has slowed down, the way you do when you realize the person you are talking to is receiving something much larger than you meant to hand them. You don't have that. No, I say. We don't have that. Oh. Theodore sits down on a low wall. He looks genuinely shaken, and this is the first time on Hesper I see one of them react to us rather than to our seats. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That must be very frightening. The keep is what they call it. It is not a building. It is not a machine, or not one anybody can point to. It was here when the Hesper arrived. The world was already green, the air was already breathable, the rivers were already stocked, and there was nobody home. 400 years of colonists have looked for the mechanism. They have dug. They have flown grids. They have sunk boreholes 3 kilometers into the crust and found rock. There is a research group in the capital that has been on the problem continuously since the second generation, staffed the way a lighthouse is staffed, handed down, and their entire body of findings after 4 centuries fits in a room and amounts to a list of things it is not. Nobody knows who built it. Nobody knows what it wants. It has never once communicated, and it has never been observed to do anything at all, except that people do not die, and injuries close over, and nothing ever seems to break down as fast as it should. It's not a god, Theodore says, when I put it clumsily. We had a lot of that early on. It went out of fashion. It's more like, you know when a house has good bones? It's not doing anything to you. It's just how the house is built. And the fingers, I say. Rye. Her hand. That's from before she came back, he says. It fixes you to how you were when you registered. Rye lost those as a girl and she was registered after, so that's her. It doesn't improve you. It keeps you. It keeps you. I write that in my notebook in the original because there is a stress on it in his mouth that I want Tang to hear, and I do not yet know why it matters. On the second morning, Theodore takes me to see the standing question, which is what they call the research group, and which occupies 3 rooms on the ground floor of a building that was put up for the purpose in the year 41 and has been continuously staffed ever since by between 4 and 9 people at a time, handed on the way a lighthouse is handed on. The woman who runs it now is called Marit, and she has been doing it for 31 years, and she takes me through their findings in about 40 minutes, which is, she points out cheerfully, 400 years of work at roughly 1 usable conclusion per decade. There is no machinery. That is the first finding and the largest. They have flown magnetic and gravimetric grids over every square kilometer of the landmass and half the seafloor. They have sunk boreholes to 3 kilometers in 11 locations. They have looked for waste heat and for radio and for anything at all that behaves like an installation, and there is nothing. And the rock is rock all the way down, and it is unremarkable rock of an entirely ordinary age. There is no boundary they have been able to find on the ground. People have walked, sailed, swum, and dug in every direction, and the effect holds everywhere on the planet, uniformly, without gradient, which Merit says is the single most annoying fact in the entire discipline, because a gradient would tell you where the source was, and there isn't one. The effect does have an outer edge, somewhere above the atmosphere, and they know this because of the ships, and they have never been able to measure where, because measuring it would require going there, and going there is the one experiment that performs itself on the experimenter. It does not respond. They have tried. There is a shelf in the second room holding the written record of every attempt anybody has made to communicate with the keep in 4 centuries. Radio, light, patterns burned into hillsides large enough to be seen from orbit, mathematics, prime sequences, appeals, prayers, and in the year 173, a man who spent 11 years constructing an enormous mechanical device on the salt flat whose only function was to be obviously artificial. And every single one of those attempts sits in that room under the same one-word annotation in 11 different hands across 400 years, which is nil. So what is your working theory? I ask her, and she laughs at me, not unkindly. Dr. Saar, we abandoned working theories in about the 80th year. What we have now is a list of things it isn't and a very good filing system. She takes a folder off the shelf and puts it back without opening it. I'll tell you what I think, personally, and it isn't science, and I'd thank you not to write it in your report. I don't think it was built for us. I think it was here doing whatever it does long before anybody came, and I think we arrived in the middle of it, and I think asking what it wants from us is like a mouse in a cathedral, asking what the architecture wants from the mouse. On the second afternoon, Theodore takes me to the long room, which is what they call the wing of the assembly building, where the record is kept, and I spend 4 hours there and come out understanding less than when I went in, which is the opposite of what a record is supposed to do to a person. It is a hall about 60 meters long, with a barrel roof and high windows on the south side, and it is lined floor to ceiling on both walls with bound volumes in a dark red cloth that somebody on this planet manufactures for no other purpose. And there are 911 of them, and there is a woman in her 70s at a desk near the door whose entire occupation, inherited from her mother and destined for her nephew, is to keep them in order and to write in the current one. She lets me take down whatever I like. That is the first thing that undoes me a little. There is no permission to seek, no form, no supervision. She shows me the index, and then she goes back to her work and leaves me alone with 400 years of a civilization's most private arithmetic, because it does not occur to anybody on Hesper that a record might be something you would want to keep from a person. The volumes are not what I expect. I expect a census. What they actually are is closer to a parish register crossed with a shipping manifest, and the columns run name, registration, date of the ask, method, outcome, count. Method is the column that takes me a while. Most of the entries in it are blank, because most asks are made of nothing. A person puts their name down against a possibility that never arrives, and the column stays empty, and the entry is a record of a hope rather than an event. But where it is filled in, it reads like the index of an enormous and patient catalog of ways to try to get off a planet. Ship, 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 survey, drone, cargo cradle, balloon, high altitude, sea, west, swimming, sea, west, boat, sea, east, boat. There is a run of 19 entries in the year 2188, all reading balloon, high altitude, all with the same outcome notation, and I sit with those 19 names for a long time, because 19 people in 1 year built or borrowed balloons and went up as far as a balloon will take you, which is nowhere near far enough, and every one of them came down and was met at the field. The outcome column has 3 possible values: kept, gone, and kept. Not attempted. There is no 4th value. In 911 volumes and 400 years, and something over 2 million recorded asks, there is not one single entry in that hall which reads simply gone, and I go looking for one, and the woman at the desk watches me do it with the particular tolerance of somebody who has watched several generations of clever young people go looking for exactly that. "There isn't one," she says, when I finally come to her desk. "I know, I wanted to see it. Everybody wants to see it." She turns her own volume round so I can look at the page she is working on, which is the current one, and which has 11,000 entries in it from the last 6 days in 3 different hands, because they have been working shifts to keep up since we landed. My grandmother used to say the day there's a gone in the book is the day the book stops being needed. She thought it was a nice thing to say. I've come round to thinking it's the cruelest sentence in the language, but she meant it kindly. I asked Sabine about the number on the 3rd day. I have found her again, or she has found me, which is more likely. She has a stall in the East Market where she repairs shoes, and she's very good at it, and she has been doing it for 206 years. 19, she says. That's my count. Count of what? She puts down the shoe. How long have you been here now, O'Dial? 3 days? And nobody's told you. She is not surprised. She sounds tired in a way I have not heard from her. That's on purpose, you know. Kadir will have told everybody to let you settle. She'll want you to like us first. Told me what? Come round the back, Sabine says. I'm going to make you a cup of something and you're going to sit down. The room behind the stall has 2 chairs and a stove and a shelf of tools worn into the shape of her hands. She makes something hot out of a root and gives me the better chair. We get out, she says. Sorry? You've been walking round for 3 days thinking we're all trapped here, and it's very sad. We're not trapped. People leave. She blows on her cup. Not often, because there's nothing to leave in. But it's happened. 4 ships in 391 years. 2 were ours, built here. The first one blew up on the pad, the second one made it, and we still get a signal off it every 11 years, and it's still going, and there are 900 people on it. Then a mining survey came through in the 200s and took 40. Then a hospital ship, a real one, big, and that was the good one. That one took 1,100 people. I am doing arithmetic, and it is not working. 1,100 people got off this planet? About 2,000 altogether, all told. Then why does everyone? Sabine, why is everyone still asking? If it works? Because it works, she says. And then she tells me. Here is what she tells me, in a back room that smells of leather and glue, with a cup going cold in my hands. The keep keeps. That is the whole of it, and everything else follows. It does not permit loss. Death is a loss, so death is reversed. Injury is a loss, so injury closes. And when a thing that the keep holds leaves the world, walks up a ramp, sits down, straps in, and goes, that is a loss. So it is not permitted. The ship goes. The people on the ship are real. They are continuous. They are whole. They wake up in transit with their own memories and their own bodies and their own 2 fingers missing. And they arrive wherever they are going and they live the rest of their lives. And there is no sense in which they are a copy of anybody, because there is nothing about them that is not the person who boarded. And on the ground, in the field, the person who boarded is standing in the grass watching the light go up. Also real, also continuous, also whole. Also carrying every single thing that person ever had up to, and including the memory of walking up the ramp, sitting down, strapping in, and feeling the engine start. You remember leaving, I say. You remember leaving. Sabine's voice does not change at all. That's the part. You've got it in your head for the rest of your life, and it's not a dream, and it's not a story somebody told you. You were there. You did it. You got out. She turns her cup around on the table. And then you're standing in a field, 19 times. 19 times. She smiles at me, and it is the same warm smile from the landing field, and I understand now what I saw behind her eyes and could not name. 4 ships in 400 years, and I made it onto 3 of them. And a few other things. There was a survey drone in the 90s that would take a person in the cargo cradle. We all tried that one. That was a bad year. And I walked out into the sea once to see if the boundary was the atmosphere. It isn't. I got about 11 kilometers, and I was in the water, and then I was on the beach. You were in the water, and then you were on the beach. Both, she says. That's the whole trick, Odile. It's not or. There's a me still swimming. There's a me on a hospital ship that left in the 240s who is nearly 200 years old now and has probably seen your Earth. Her hand is flat on the table. Good for her. Genuinely. I hope she's well. And I'm here, and I've been here the whole time, and I'll be here after you go, and my count will be 20. I do not remember leaving the market. I remember being in the street with the light wrong and people going past me, and a woman touching my arm and asking if I was well, and me saying yes, and her asking if I had eaten. That is the thing about Hesper. Everyone asks if you have eaten. 4 million people who have all been left behind, on average, several times, by themselves, and they will still stop in the street to check whether a stranger has had lunch. Fenn does not believe it. It's a religion, he says. We are in the guest house, in the room with the 2 beds, and Beau is sitting on the windowsill because Beau does not like chairs. It's a very old, very stable, very comforting religion about death, and it has grown a doctrine. And the doctrine is that everyone who leaves also stays, which is exactly the doctrine you would invent if you were 4 million people watching 2,000 people leave over 4 centuries. They have a ledger, I say. What? They have a ledger. Every departure, every name, every count. It goes back to the second ship. It's kept in the assembly building, and there are 900 volumes, and it is the most thorough civil record I have ever seen in my life. And Fenn. I looked. I picked names at random, and I traced them, and the arithmetic works. There's a man called Osip Vance who is on the passenger list of the hospital ship in 2247, and who is also on the water committee minutes for the following spring, and for every spring since, and there is a photograph of him in the hall. That's a naming convention. They name children after. He's the same man. Fenn. He is the same man, he has the same registration, and I asked him about it, and he told me about the departure lounge on that ship and the color of the seats. Then let me tell you about Osip Vance, I say, and then you can tell me it's a naming convention to my face. I had gone looking for him that afternoon, because his was the name I had pulled at random out of volume 640, and because the arithmetic on his entry was the first that made the back of my neck go tight. He is a man of about 70 who keeps bees on the second terrace above the town, and he has an office of sorts in a shed with a stove in it, and he made me tea in a jar and sat down across from me on an upturned crate and answered every question I had for 2 hours without once appearing to find any of it strange. You left in 2247, I said. On the Verity, yes, the hospital ship. 1,100 of us. He said this the way a man tells you what he did in the war, with a certain weathered pride and no drama at all. I was 31. They took us up in lots of 40, and I was in the 9th lot, which meant I stood on that field for 6 hours in the rain watching other people go, and that was the longest day of my life. And then it wasn't, because I've had a lot of days since. You remember boarding? I remember all of it. I remember the ramp and the smell of the ship, which was. You'll know this. It's the smell of a ship. There's nothing else like it. And I remember a woman in a blue jacket showing me where to put my bag, and I remember her saying we'd be underway in 4 hours. He turned the jar around in his hands. And then I remember standing in the grass at the bottom of the field with the rain coming sideways, watching the last lot go up, and my mother had her arm round me, and she'd been through it twice herself, so she knew not to say anything. Both. In order. No gap. He looked up at me and his eyes were perfectly clear. That's the thing people from outside can never quite hold on to. They want there to be a seam. They want me to say that one of them feels thinner or further away, like a dream does. And I understand why they want it. Because if there's a seam, then one of them is the real one and the other's a story. There's no seam, Odile. I have got two memories of the same afternoon, and they are exactly as solid as each other, and they were both mine. What do you think happened to him? The one who went? Osip Vance smiled at me, and it was the kindest and most frightening expression I saw on that planet. He got old somewhere else, he said. That's what I think. He'd be 150-something, and I don't imagine he made it. And I hope it was quick, and I hope somebody was there. He shrugged. I've had 194 years up here with the bees. He got about 70 years and an ending. I've never been able to decide which of us was robbed, and I've had a long time to think about it. Bo speaks for the first time in an hour, from the windowsill, without turning round. Test it, he says. We both look at him. You want to know if it's real. Test it. He shrugs. Something small. Something that can't be a trick. Not a person. We test it with Fenn's watch. It is a real watch, mechanical, that belonged to his mother, and it is the only object any of us has brought down that is unambiguously and personally ours. He does not want to. He does it because he is the one who said it was a religion, and he is an honest man. We take it to the field. We give it to Ilse Kadir, and we explain what we want, and she does not laugh, and she does not argue, and she sends a boy off on a bicycle. Bo takes the lander up at 11:40 with Fenn's watch in the empty seat pocket and nothing else aboard. He goes to 2,000 kilometers, which is well past anything anyone could call atmosphere, and he hangs there for 11 minutes with the watch, and Teng confirms from the ptarmigan that there is one object in that boat and that it is the size of a watch. He comes down at 12:07. There is a watch in the seat pocket. It is Fenn's mother's watch, running, showing the correct time. And there is a watch on the trestle table at the fence line, which the boy on the bicycle has been standing next to since 11:41, and which the boy has not touched, and which appeared on the table. He says, and 11 other people say. At about the moment the lander cleared the top of the sky. It is Fenn's mother's watch. It is running. It shows the correct time. It has the same scratch across the crystal from a door frame in Marseille in 2331 and the same worn place on the strap. Fenn picks one up in each hand and stands there in the middle of a field in front of 400 silent people holding two of his mother's watch. He does not say anything for a long time. Then he says, "Which one's hers?" And Ilse Kadir, who has watched this exact thing happen to other people for 60 years, says, very gently, "Both of them love." I filed a report to Teng that night, and it takes 2 hours, and he does not interrupt once. When I finish, there is a long pause on the link. "Say the last part again," he says. "If we take passengers, sir, they arrive. They're real. They're not copies in any sense I can defend. But the person we take also stays here, whole, alive, remembering having boarded. So we can't rescue anybody. We can rescue somebody, sir. We just can't remove them." Another pause. "Sir, what do the locals want us to do?" "They want us to take 3 people. Knowing that. They've known that for 400 years, sir. There are 4 million people on this planet, and I would estimate that upward of 95% of them would board that lander tonight, knowing exactly what it does, and I don't. I stop, because my voice has gone somewhere I did not authorize. I don't think they're wrong, sir. That's the part I can't get round. If it were me, I think I'd go." "Would you?" Teng says. Word gets out on the 5th day. It is nobody's fault. 4,000 people watched a man stand in a field holding 2 watches, and there is no censor on this planet, and there never has been, and by nightfall the story is on the reading program, between a chapter of a novel and the weather. The old man doing the reading says, in a warm voice, to an entire world. And so it seems the ship is real, and the seats are real, and there are 3 of them. By morning the road to the landing field is full. I want to be precise about the next part, because it is the part people get wrong when they hear about Hesper, and because the wrongness is an insult to those people. There is no riot. Nobody storms anything. There is not, in the whole of what follows, one act of malice by any inhabitant of that planet toward any of us. What there is a queue. It forms overnight, and it is orderly, and it has stewards, because of course it does. Because this is a civilization that has spent 4 centuries getting extremely good at handling the ask, and the ask has protocols, and there is a form and a ledger and a set of manners for the whole business. People bring chairs, people bring food and share it down the line. There is a man walking up and down with a cart giving out water and refusing anything for it. By noon on the 6th day, the queue is 140,000 people long, and it is still growing, and it is the most civilized thing I have ever seen, and it is moving toward us at walking pace, and it cannot stop. That is the thing nobody understands. It is not that they turn on us. It is that 4 million people walking politely toward the same field is a physical event, and physics does not care how good your manners are. Bo sees it before I do, because Bo flies things and thinks in masses. We have to go, he says on the 6th evening. We are on the ramp. The nearest edge of the queue is 400 meters out, and the stewards are holding it, and the stewards are volunteers, and there are maybe 200 of them. Kadir says they'll hold. Kadir's a good woman, and she's wrong. He is looking out at it, and his hands are doing something on the rail that I have never seen them do. O-dial. Do the numbers. There's a road out there, and it's 12 meters wide, and there are people on it standing 4 abreast for 11 kilometers, and behind them there are more coming in from Coley and from the North Terraces, and every one of them is polite, and every one of them will wait their turn. Fine. Now, what happens at the front when the ones at the back can't see and they push? They'll be told to stop. They can't hear. That's what I'm telling you. It's not a decision anybody makes. He turns round. And here's the part that's keeping me up. On any other planet, a crowd like that kills 100 people at the front, and the crowd stops, because a crowd stops when people start dying. That's the only thing that ever stops one. I am already there. I get there about a second before he says it, and I wish I had not. They don't stay dead, I say. They don't stay dead, Bo says. We go on the 7th day. Teng gives the order at 0600, and he does it well. He does not pretend it is anything other than what it is. Get off the ground before somebody gets hurt. And Ils Kadir agrees with him, and Kadir is the one who does the hardest thing anybody does in this entire account, which is to walk down that queue at first light, telling 180,000 people that the ship is leaving today, and that the ask will be taken by the ledger, and that the 3 names will be drawn from the ledger by the method used for the hospital ship, which is a lottery, and which everybody there has grown up hearing about. The queue takes it well. I want that on the record. They take it well for about 40 minutes. What breaks it is not greed. It is a rumor, and the rumor is not even wrong. Somebody says the ship is leaving early, and the ship is leaving early, and the front of the queue starts to move. Here is what a crowd does. The front moves, and the front cannot stop, because there are 200,000 people behind it, and the ones at the back have no information. Everybody in that crowd is walking at a normal pace. Nobody is running. The pressure builds because pressure in a crowd is a wave, and it travels through bodies the way a wave travels through water, and when it reaches the front, there is nowhere for it to go, so it goes into people. The stewards hold for 6 minutes. I watch a man called Adaba hold, a line of 40 with his arms out, and his heels dug in, shouting for calm in a voice that carries, and I watch the wave come up the field and go through him. Then the fence goes. The stone perimeter is a metre high and 400 years old, and it goes down in a section about 60 metres wide, and it does not fall over so much as it dissolves into the ground under the weight of people coming over it, and the ones on top of it go down, and the ones behind cannot see them. Bo has the engines running. I am at the top of the ramp. Fen is on the field. He goes out because he is a doctor, and there are people down, And I have thought about this for a long time, and I do not believe there was any version of Fenellarkon that stayed on the ramp. He goes out with a bag, and he gets about 30 meters, and he reaches a woman on the ground, and he goes to his knees beside her, and I lose sight of him for 4 seconds, and then the crowd is where he was. I scream his name. It is a completely useless thing to do, and I do it anyway. Bo drags me inside by the collar of my suit and puts me on the deck and holds me there with a knee, and I am fighting him, and he is saying, Odile, 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 over and over in a flat voice while the lander comes up off the grass, and through the open hatch as it swings I can see the field. 15,000 people in a space that holds 4,000. And in the middle of it, in the crush, where the pressure is highest, people going down and not coming up. And getting up. That is the image. That is the one I have. Not the crowd. The way the crowd doesn't thin. A man goes down under the weight and is gone, entirely gone, and 11 or 12 seconds of it, and then he is standing again in the same square mitra with his shirt torn open and no marks on him, pushing forward, because he does not know that he died and there is no wound to tell him. The crush cannot resolve. That is what I need you to hold on to. On any world in the galaxy, that crowd empties itself out through its own dead, and by evening there is a field and a line of bodies and a terrible silence. Not here. Here the pressure has nowhere to go and no way to release, and the bodies are conserved, and it just goes on, and it goes on. And by the time we are at 400 meters, it has been going on for 11 minutes, and there are people at the center of that field who have died 6 or 7 times each and are still walking forward. I have the recording. I have watched it more times than is good for me, and I can tell you what it looks like from 400 meters, which is that it does not look like violence at all. It looks like a liquid. There is a standing wave about 60 meters across where the broken section of wall was, and the wave does not move. It stays exactly where it is, in the same place in the field, for 2.5 hours, because it is being fed from behind at precisely the rate at which it consumes itself. And every few seconds, it produces a small, dark stillness where somebody has gone under, and a few seconds later, that stillness closes over, and there is nobody there. And then, 40 or 50 meters back, well outside the wave, a person stands up in the middle of the crowd who was not standing there a moment ago and looks around and starts walking forward again. They come back where they are registered, and most of Hesper is registered at home, and home is up the valley. So what you can actually see if you know what you are looking at is a slow circulation. People going down at the wall and reappearing kilometers away and walking back down the road to the field, over and over, all afternoon, a current running through a population. Nobody in that crowd understands what is happening at the front. That is the part I once said clearly, because the record should be fair to them. The ones at the wall know. The ones 11 kilometers back on the Coley Road know only that the line is moving, and they move with it, politely, apologizing when they bump each other, sharing water, and some of them have been queuing for 2 days and have made friends. At 11:30, Ilse Kadir walks into the wave. She goes in from the side with 4 stewards and her arms up, shouting, and I lose her almost at once. And she comes back at 11:48 in her own house, 9 kilometers away, with her coat gone and her hair down, and she is on a bicycle and heading back toward the field before her husband has got the door open. She does it 3 more times that afternoon. We hang at 2 kilometers for 3 hours. Nobody speaks much. Bo flies. I sit in the back with my hands between my knees. Tang comes on the link and I tell him about Fen and he says, "Say again," and I say it again, and he says, "Understood," in a voice like a door closing. At 14:20 the field starts to clear. Not because anything is resolved, because Ilse Kadir gets on the public channel, the one the old man reads books on, and talks for 40 minutes in a voice I will hear for the rest of my life, and asks people to go home, and tells them that the ship has seen what happened, and that the ship will not take anybody now, and that this is nobody's fault and everybody's shame. By 4 in the afternoon, there is a field with a broken wall and 11,000 people sitting on the grass in silence. At 16:15, Bo puts us down. At 16:40, while I am standing on the ramp, not knowing what to do with my hands, Fen Alarcon walks out of the crowd. He walks up the field on his own with his bag still over his shoulder. He is not injured. There is no blood on him. His shirt is torn at the shoulder seam, and there is grass in his hair, and he is walking normally. And he comes up to the bottom of the ramp and stops and looks up at me, and his face is the wrong color. "Odile," he says. "Fen, I died." He says it like a man reporting a symptom. I want to say it before anything else because I want a witness and I want it written down. I was on the ground and I could not get my chest to move, and I knew what was happening, and I was. He stops. He starts again. It took a long time. It took a lot longer than people say. I get him inside. Bo seals the hatch. "Where were you?" Bo says. "Where'd you come back?" "The resting house. The empty one." Fen sits down on the deck with his back against a locker. "There's a room. It's got beds in it, and it's warm, and it's the only building on this planet nobody uses. And there's somebody in it at all times, in a chair, on a rota. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" They keep somebody in that room around the clock, have done for centuries, so that anybody who comes back doesn't have to wake up alone. "Who was in the chair?" I ask. "A boy," Fen says. "About 15. He gave me a blanket and a cup of tea, and he asked me if I was well and if I'd eaten." He puts his face in his hands, and then he asked me if I'd take him with us. The argument happens that night in the guest house with the shutters closed, and it is the worst hour any of the three of us has ever spent together. Fen wants to leave immediately and take nobody. He has come back from the dead that afternoon, and he is not entirely in possession of himself. And what he says, over and over, in a voice that gets flatter every time, is that we killed people today by having seats, and that we will kill more tomorrow by having seats, and that the only thing on this planet that is dangerous is us. Bo wants to leave immediately and take 3, on the grounds that we are going to leave either way, and the seats are going to be empty either way, and that empty seats are an obscenity. And I sit on the end of a bed and listen to 2 men I would die for argue about whether a rescue that leaves the rescued person standing in a field is a rescue or a cruelty, and I find that I cannot make the case for either side without immediately being able to make the case against it, and eventually Fen turns on me and asks me directly what I think, and I tell him the truth, which is that I think it is not ours to decide. "They've been running this for 400 years, I say. There's a ledger and a lottery and a form of words and a custom for touching people on the way up the field. We turned up 8 days ago. The only question in front of us is whether we do it their way or whether we substitute our own judgment for the judgment of 4 million people who have thought about this considerably harder than we have. Their way killed 40 people today," Fen says. "Nobody died today. It comes out of me with more edge than I intend. That's the whole thing, Fen. That's what we can't hold in our heads, and they can. Nobody on this planet died today, and nobody died in 2247, and nobody has died here since 391 years ago, and every single instinct we have about crowds and risk and duty of care was built on a world where dying is the thing that stops people." He looks at me for a long moment. "Then what did I do this afternoon?" he says. And there is no answer to that, and none of us has one, and we go to bed at 3 in the morning having agreed on nothing at all. We stay 11 more days. That is a decision made 41 light years away by Teng on the following logic. We are the first ship in 90 years, we will be the last for who knows how long, and we cannot leave without doing the one thing we can do. We take the ledger, not the paper. There are 900 volumes, and we cannot lift them. We image every page, 400 years of civil record, every departure, every count, every name of every person who ever left this planet and every person left standing in the grass, and we put it in the ptarmigan's permanent archive, and we send a copy ahead of us on the long channel so that it exists in 2 places before we ever break orbit. It is the only thing they ask us for as a people, as opposed to as individuals. You'll take the record, Kadir says. We'd like somebody to have it. Somewhere that isn't here. Why? Because we're not going to be believed, she says, and I've made my peace with that. But there's a difference between not being believed and not being written down. And they ask. They keep asking. Every single one of them. All 11 days. And it is the thing that finally works on me. Not the crush, not the field, not the watches. It is the sheer unbroken courtesy of 4 million people who have every reason to tear us apart, and who keep asking politely instead, and taking not this time for an answer, and then feeding us. Rai asks me 4 times. Theodore asks me 9. A woman in the North Terraces who has never met me walks 2 days to the guest house to ask me once, formally, at the door, with her hair done, and I say not this time, and she says not this time, and thanks me for hearing her, and walks 2 days home. On the last night, Sabine finds me on the wall behind the guest house where I have taken to sitting. You're going tomorrow? Yes! 3 seats! 3 seats, I say. It's a lottery. Kadir's drawing it in the morning. I know. I'm in it. She sits down next to me. She is holding 2 cups. She gives me one. 19,000 to 1, roughly. I've had worse. We sit there for a while. The terraces are lit up the way they are every night, and somebody down in the town is playing something with strings, badly. Sabine, can I ask you something that's going to be rude? Please. Why do you do it? You know exactly what happens. You've known for 200 years. You've stood in that field 19 times, and every single time you were still standing in it afterwards. I turn to look at her. What is it for? She thinks about it properly. That is the thing about them. She takes about a minute. Because there's a woman out there who's me, she says. She got on a hospital ship in 2247, and she'd have seen 4 other stars by now, and she'd have got old, Odile. Do you understand what I'm saying? She'd have got old. She's probably dead by now, and that's not a tragedy. That's the ending. That's what an ending is. She turns the cup in her hands. And she remembers this valley the way you remember a place you left. Fondly. Occasionally. And when she thinks about the woman who stayed, she probably feels a bit sad, and then she gets on with her day. And that's enough. It's not enough. It's just what there is. She drinks. And I'll tell you the other thing, which is worse, and which nobody says out loud. Every time you make the ask, and they say not this time, you stay exactly as you are. And every time they say yes, one of you gets out. She looks at me sideways. 1 out of 2 is the best odds anybody on this planet has ever been offered, she says. You take it. Everybody takes it. That's not despair, Odile. That's just arithmetic. And you do it too. The lottery is at 8 in the morning, and Kadir draws 3 names in front of 11,000 people and reads them out, and the 11,000 applaud, warmly and genuinely, for 3 strangers. Sabine is not drawn. The 3 are a man of 60 called Absalom Reyes, count of 4, a woman of 26 called Han Pell, count of 1, and a boy of 15 who is the boy from the resting house, the one who sat in the chair and gave Fen a blanket, and whose name is Theodore Kadir, and who is Ilse Kadir's grandson. And I watch her read her own grandson's name off a slip of paper in front of 11,000 people in a completely steady voice. Nobody objects. Nobody even looks at her. They put their hands on him as he walks up the field. That is the custom. The whole way, from the wall to the ramp, 400 meters, people reaching out to touch his shoulder and his back and his hair, saying nothing at all. He gets to the bottom of the ramp and turns around, and there is another Theodore coming up the field behind him. I need to be careful here. It is not instantaneous. That is the detail everybody gets wrong. The kept one does not appear until the departing one is gone, until they are past whatever line the keep considers to be the edge, which is somewhere above the atmosphere and which nobody has ever been able to measure. So what actually happens is this. Theodor Kadir walks up our ramp and sits down in seat 4 and straps himself in, and he is shaking. And I do his buckle for him because his hands do not work. And Absalom Reyes sits in 5 and cries silently the entire time. And Han Pell in 6 holds a small cloth bag on her lap and does not move at all. And we lift, and we go up through 11 kilometers of clear morning, and at about 130 kilometers, Bo says, "That's atmosphere." And about 4 seconds later, Theodor Kadir makes a sound I have never heard a human being make, because he knows what has just happened on the ground. We dock at 1340. There are handshakes. Teng is very good with them. He is better with them than I would have believed, and he takes them to the mess himself and sits with them and does not talk about the planet at all. He talks about the ship and where they will sleep and what there is to eat. I go down to my cabin and I sit on the bunk and I am shaking and I do not know why. At 15:20 I go up to the observation gallery because I want to see it once more before we burn. Yusuf is there. He is at the far end with a mug, looking down at the Terminator crawling across a green continent. "You did a good thing," he says. "Did we? You brought 3 people out of it?" He stops. "Yeah, I don't know. Yeah." And then he says, "Odile, why are you up here?" I do not understand the question. I say, "Same as you." And Yusuf turns round with the mug in his hand and looks at me with an expression I cannot read at all and says, very carefully, the way you speak to somebody standing on a ledge, "Odile, you're on the ground. Here is what is true. I remember the ramp. I remember doing Theodor Kadir's buckle for him because his hands were not working, and the specific resistance of the strap and the smell of the cabin, which is a smell I have known for 11 months. I remember Bo saying that's atmosphere. I remember the sound Theodor made. I remember docking. I remember the handshakes and Teng being kind, and the observation gallery, and the Terminator on the green continent, and Yusuf with his mug. And I remember standing in a field. I have both. I have both of them, whole, unbroken, in order, with nothing missing in between, and they do not contradict each other because they are not competing. There is a woman on that ship who is me, entirely me, who came up the ramp and did a boy's buckle and is going home to Earth, and she is not a ghost, or a copy, or a shadow, and if you met her, you would meet me. And there is me, standing in a field. Sabine is there when it lands. Of course she is. Every one of them is there for every one of these. That is what the touching on the way up is for. It is not a farewell. It is a promise. It means we will be here. There is grass under my boots. There is a broken wall over to the west where 11 days ago a crowd came through it. Above us, very high, there is a bright point moving east against the morning, and it does not blink, and it does not slow down. And I watch it for a long time until it goes behind the terrace ridge and does not come out the other side. What I have not been able to describe to anybody, including myself, is the 11 seconds. The lander goes up, and for a while it is a thing you can watch, a shape with a shadow under it, and then it is a light, and then it is a light among other lights, and you have to work to keep hold of which one it is. And there is a moment. Everybody on this planet knows this moment. It has a name here, and the name translates badly as the turn, when the light stops being something that is leaving and becomes something that has left. And in that moment I was in 2 places. And I want to put down as carefully as I can what that was actually like, because there is a great deal of nonsense talked about it by people who have never had it happen. It was not a splitting. Nothing tore. There was no sensation of division, no dizziness, no white light, no sense of being pulled in 2 directions. And if you are imagining any of that, then you are imagining it wrong. What happened was that I was strapped into the 4th seat, with my hand on a 15-year-old boy's forearm because his hands were shaking, and I was watching the numbers on the bulkhead climb, and I was aware of a pressure through my back and the particular smell of a cabin under load. And then I was standing in wet grass with the wind coming across the field, and the pressure was gone, and the smell was gone, and my hand was closed around nothing at all. That is the whole of it. There was no moment of becoming. There was simply a woman in a chair, and then there was a woman in a field, and the woman in the field had every single thing the woman in the chair had, including the shape of a boy's arm in her hand, and she had it as a thing that had just happened to her half a second ago in a room that no longer existed anywhere she could reach. I stood there with my hand still curled. Sabine puts her hand on my shoulder and leaves it there. "There you are," she says. I cannot say anything. "I know," she says. "I know. It's the first one. It's the worst one. And I'll tell you the truth because you'll find it out anyway. It doesn't get better. It just gets familiar." Her hand tightens. "Have you eaten?" I shake my head. "Come on, then." We walk down the field toward the road, and the crowd parts for us the way it does, and people reach out and touch my shoulder as I go past, saying nothing at all, and I understand that they are not consoling me. They are welcoming me. At the wall, a woman I have never met steps out in front of me, and she has done her hair, and she stands very straight, and she says, "Odile, will you take me with you when you go?" And I stand there in the grass with the light going and the ship gone and 400 people watching, and I understand that this is a real question, and that on this world it will always be a real question, and that there is no answer to it except the one they have all been giving each other for 391 years. "Not this time," I say. "Not this time," she says, and she smiles at me, and she means it kindly, and she steps back into the crowd. "I have been here 4 months now. The guest house is mine, since nobody else has any use for it. Kadir found me work in the 2nd week, which is not charity, it is treatment, the standard treatment applied for 4 centuries to everybody who comes off that field for the first time, which is to give them something with their hands in it, and somebody to do it beside. I keep the ledger in the long room 3 days a week. The woman at the desk is teaching me the hand they use for it, which is deliberately slow and old-fashioned, and which I am told takes about a year to get right, and I have found that I do not mind that at all. There is a thing that happens to me most mornings, in the few seconds after waking, and before I am properly assembled, where I am on the ptarmigan, in the middle bunk, listening to the fan. I have stopped fighting it. That was Sabine's advice, and Osip Vance's, and the advice of about 15 other people who came round in the first month, to sit with me for an hour each, and tell me the same 3 or 4 things in slightly different words, which is another custom, and which is the single kindest institution I have ever encountered anywhere. She is nearly home by now. That is the arithmetic, 41 light years and change, and she will be coming up on the outer stations about now, and there will be a debrief and a great deal of paperwork, and somebody will ask her the same 11 questions in 4 different rooms. She will hand over 900 volumes of a civil register, and she will make a case for a return mission with a proper ship and 1,000 berths, and I know she will make it well, because I know exactly how she will make it, because it is the case I would make. I think about the return mission a great deal. I think about a ship with 1,000 berths coming down on that field, and what 4 million people will do when the number is 1,000 instead of 3, and whether they will queue. They will queue. That is what I have learned here. They will queue, and they will bring chairs, and somebody will walk up and down the line with a cart giving out water and refusing anything for it. So that is the ledger, and I am on it now, and if you are hearing this, then the other one made it home, and the record went with her, and I would like her to know that we are well. They asked me for a count when they entered my name. I did not understand at first, and Sabine had to explain it to me twice, and then I gave it to them, and the boy wrote it down in the book in very good handwriting. Odile, 1. That's where it ends. Thank you for listening, genuinely. That was a long way to walk with me. I'd like to know 2 things, and I mean it. I'm not just asking. The first, would you have got on the lander? Knowing. Odile knew before she boarded, and she did it anyway, and I've argued myself round in circles about whether that makes her brave or whether it makes her the same as every other person on that planet. The second, and this is the one I keep chewing on, which one of them is the real Odile? I've got an answer, but I've changed it twice this week, and I'd rather hear yours first. Tell me in the comments. If you want more like this, subscribe. See you next time.